Hey everybody, so I haven't recommended things that are in paperback in quite some time, but I have been sent a number of amazing books that just came out in paperback that I need to make sure are on your TBR. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? As always, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and of course I hope you're reading an amazing book or two or three or four. Today I'm here to recommend paperbacks. Sometimes publishers will send me books in their paperback editions, and I always keep them, and I usually can read them easier when I travel. But then I was like, I've never done a video where I've just recommended the paperbacks that were sent to me. So that's what I'm here today to do. So without further ado, get out your pen, your paper, your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, get these books from your local independent bookstore or your library, or however you want to get your hands on them and read them and tell me all about it. So the first book that I want to tell you about is called The Nursery by Szilvia Molnar. This is out from Vintage Paperback, and this is the story of a woman and dealing with what comes after, during and after having a child. So we find out that she's always been sort of isolated. She's an interpreter and she lives in her home and she's always sort of had this isolated life. And then she has the baby and things become even more isolated for her. And she realizes as much as she loves the child, she also has these feelings of anger and frustrations with this relationship. And her husband has really done nothing to help support her. She winds up like starting a friendship with this man downstairs. I think his name is Peter, and Peter is dying and at the end of his life. And so together they sort of are trying to find a way to deal with what's going on to both of them while learning from one another. So that is The Nursery by Szilvia Molnar, out from Vintage Paperback. I think that sounds absolutely fantastic. Actually, I just need to sit down and read all of these because I'm about to tell you about a bunch of fantastic sounding books. The next book I want to tell you about is called The Society of Shame. This is by Jane Roper. This is also out from Vintage Paperback. I'm going to let the book help me here because this one has some twists and turns. So, Kathleen Held's life is turned upside down when she arrives home to find her garage on fire and her husband on the front lawn in his underwear. But the scandal emerges that her husband, Bill, who is running for the U.S. Senate, is actually having an affair with one of his young staffers. But that's not the big scandal. There is a photograph that's taken at the scene that accidentally captures a period stain on Kathleen's pants. Overnight, Kathleen becomes an unwitting figurehead for a new women's rights movement. #YesWeBleed. Humiliated, she desperately tries to hide from the spotlight. But when she stumbles upon the Society of Shame, led by the canceled author Danica Bellevue, Kathleen finds herself part of a motley group working to recover from the various scandals. Using the teachings of the society, Kathleen channels her newfound fame to reap the benefits of her humiliation, sorry about that, and reclaim herself. But as she ascends to celebrity status, Kathleen's growing obsession with maintaining her online popularity threatens a new and most important relationship in real life, that with her budding activist daughter, Aggie. So that sounds like, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to laugh. I feel like I'm going to have a lot to say when this book is over. So that's The Society of Shame by Jane Roper, out from Vintage Paperback. Okay. Actually, you know what? It seems like Vintage Paperback sends me a lot. So just thank you to them. They are amazing. The next book I want to tell you about is by Lindsay Starck. It's called Monsters We Have Made. And this one sounds a bit creepy. So 13 years ago, our main character's young daughter, Faye, attacked her babysitter, saying that it was in order to impress this king man, a monster that she had met on the internet. And after that, the book sort of goes forward 23 years later. And her daughter, Szilvia is our main character, her daughter, Faye, has disappeared and left her baby behind. As Szilvia sort of launches into a search for her daughter, this episode with the King Man and all of this come from the past comes back into fruition. I love what it says. Will Szilvia be able to reach her daughter before history repeats itself? Or will Szilvia now lose her grip on reality and succumb to the dark powers of this monstrous fiction? So that's Monsters We Have Made by Lindsay Starck, and this is out from Vintage Paperback. Okay. I have read one of these books, I think, in this pile, and that is Lorrie Moore's I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home. I actually started this when it came out in hardback, and it just, at the beginning of it, I was like, what is going on here? Wasn't for me. And then it won the National Book Critics Circle Award, and Chris and Bernie were recommending it on their Instagram, and I was like, I'm going to pick it up again. So I did. This is a weird book. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is a book that has left me thinking ever since I turned the final page. So there's two stories here intertwined. One is the story of a teacher who starts the novel by visiting his dying brother in the Bronx, who has cancer, and it is not something that he is going to recover from. But while he's there and sharing their stories and sharing their history, he gets a phone call about his sort of the love of his life. They're not in a relationship any longer. She's actually moved on to a new relationship, but he's never really gotten over her and never not really been her rock. I want to say her name is Lindsay. I apologize if that's wrong. But so he gets in his car and drives, and he finds out that she's been dealing with mental health issues, and she has taken her life. And he goes to the graveyard to say goodbye, and he finds her there, and they start a road trip together. And it's a story about their relationship and him finding himself inside of it, also dealing with the loss of his brother, or the coming loss of his brother. The other story is very interesting. It is set during the time of Abraham Lincoln. It's about a woman. It's sort of, she's writing letters to her sister about a man who has moved into the house and some things that happen. And I don't want to ruin it, but I will just tell you, it is so weird and wonderfully kooky. And how it all comes together is really the brilliance of Lorrie Moore. So let me recommend I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home, which when it comes out in the book, that title is so brilliant. And if you think about it, that title is so brilliant. But that's by Lorrie Moore. It's out in paperback now. I highly recommend it. Okay. Next on that list is from Riverhead Books, and that's The Great Reclamation by Rachel Heng. Now, I read Rachel's first book, right? Wasn't that the suicide? Hold on, I want to make sure I'm not thinking of someone else. Oh, goodness. Of course, there's no book written there. Suicide Club. That's right. Suicide Club. I couldn't remember the name. I read her first book, and I absolutely loved it. This book is very, very different. But The Great Reclamation is the story of a young boy in a 20th century coastal town in Singapore, and he finds out he has this power that to locate these like impossible, bountiful, movable islands. And he wants to share this with his people, and he wants to share it especially with a young girl that he has come to love. And then the book just follows them. It follows them through. It says they get caught in the tragic sweep of history. The Japanese armies invade, the resistance rises, and as the nation hurtles towards rebirth, the two friends, newly empowered, must decide who they want to be and what they are willing to give up. This one is actually also high on my TBR just because I've heard nothing but fantastic things about it, and I'm super excited about it. Okay, 3 more recommendations for you. We're going to go a little World War II here and talk about The Midnight News by Jo Baker. You may remember Jo Baker. She wrote Longbourn that was pretty popular a couple of years ago now. We are in 1940. We meet 20-year-old Charlotte, and the war is going on, right? Her brother, she's sad because her brother, who went to France, has never returned. She's holding down a typist job in the Ministry of Information. She has a best friend, but the world is what the world is. And then she often sees, it says, on her way to work, she often sees this boy who feeds the birds, a source of unexpected joy amid the rubble. But every day brings new scenes of devastation and yet another heartbreaking loss. Catherine has an uncanny sense of foreboding. Someone is stalking them. Someone is stalking her friends, and now that person is stalking her. And what can she do about it? So that's The Midnight News by Jo Baker, and that is out from, that's also vintage. Okay, next up is a book that is more of a summer read. I feel like some of these have had some heavy topics. Would you agree? Let's go ahead and talk about Save What's Left by Elizabeth Castellano, and this, again, out from vintage. This is the story of Kathleen. She has been married to her husband, Tom, for 30 years when he says, He's not happy anymore. And I love on the back, it says, there's like this line that's like, we've been married 30 years. Who said anything about being happy? Crack me up, even from the back of the book. But what she winds up doing is she winds up moving to this little town, this East Coast town, and finds out that it's not the quiet little town she was thinking it was going to be. Her neighbor is kind of cantankerous. There's things going on, and what's really going on is another neighbor is trying to build this massive mansion called the Sugar Cube. It's like this monstrosity. And so she decides she's going to finally get involved. And it turns out that the whole town and everything is much more than she expected, but maybe exactly what she needed to get through what's been going on in her life. So that's Save What's Left by Elizabeth Castellano, and that's out from Vintage Books. Okay, last but not least is the novel Lucky Dogs by Helen Schulman. And I'm sort of like, this cover to me is just like crazy good. It's crazy good. I love it. Okay, so we are in Paris. It's it's a sultry summer night in Paris. And two women meet in line. They meet in an ice cream line. And they automatically have a connection. One is sort of trying to hide who she is. And the other one is maybe a little bit more out there as far as sort of like being the person she is to everybody else. They both find that they have a history of dealing with being victims of male violence, and both are sort of warriors to fight stuff. And they think that they know who each other are, only to find out maybe they don't know each other as well as they thought they did. I think, yeah, sounds great, right? So that's Lucky Dogs by Helen Schulman, again, out from Vintage. Now I'm going to hold all of these up because this is a paperback stack. I can actually do this. This is the stack of books that I'm showing you right now. I hope that you pick up all of these or get your hands on them as soon as possible. As always, if you're a return subscriber, thank you so much. If you're new to my channel, I hope you pick up a paperback. And as always, I encourage you to read globally, shop locally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading.